Hello and welcome back to Mark My Words. My name is Tom, and in this video we are going to be talking about the implementation process for BigPicture. And we're going to be answering three main questions that we get asked by our partners, our customers. The first one is, how does the implementation process look like? The second one is, how long does the implementation process for BigPicture take? And the third one is, can you do it alone? Can you do it by yourself? So these are the three questions, and off to the answers to every one of those questions. So the first one, what does the implementation process of BigPicture look like? So several years ago, when we started to play with PMO solutions in Jira environment and BigPicture, portfolio for Jira back then, advanced roadmaps right now, structured a little bit, we kind of were experimenting over how to, create a good implementation process so that it's successful in the end. And I'm not ashamed to say that, we've been learning, we've been experimenting, and we've made some mistakes. We've made some errors. And after reviewing those errors, talking to our customers, figuring out what worked and what didn't work, we came up with the process that we are using right now, and it has proven to be quite beneficial for both sides. So for us, it gives us the satisfaction of the great work that we deliver. For the customer, it brings them the value that they are looking for. It gives them ownership over the solution that gets implemented in the end, and they keep using the tools after we are gone. So here's how the process looks like. In a simplified version, we call it the implementation week, although bear in mind later on we will be talking about this, it doesn't really mean that it will take only a week. But in the simplest case scenario, this is what it takes, and this is how it looks like. So if we talk about the week as 5 working days, let's go through all those 5 working days to figure out what we're actually doing during those days. So the first day is basically for us. It's basically for us to learn and understand where you're at and where you want to get to, right? What tools do you already have? What tools are you going to be using after the switch? If you're migrating from one tool to another, we take it into consideration. Very often we meet customers or partners that go through Microsoft Project, for example, into Jira environment and BigPicture, right? So this is quite a obvious case, but there are several other tools that our partners get migrated from as well. So we have to learn what's the environment that we can move around. And then the second part is obviously gather the requirements, talk with all the stakeholders, learn from them what they want to get from the new tool, because very, very often, it's the chance to make some improvements in your processes, in your environment as well. So you're changing the tool, and at the same time, you kind of want to make things work a little bit smoother, a little bit better, maybe automate some stuff, things like that. So this is all that has to be taken into consideration. If I can add something over here, I really want to say that the approach that I really hate is when the customer is switching from one tool to another. Both tools kind of allow him to do the same thing, but are completely different and work in a different environment, and still the customer wants to get the same result at the end. This really screws the implementation process, because then instead of leaning on the strengths of the tool that we are implementing, we are kind of trying to bend it to what the previous tool has been doing. That I really don't like doing that. So I hugely prefer customers that are a little bit more flexible in terms of understanding that when you're switching tools, things are going to work a little bit different, and that's fine as long as you can adjust to it and you can use the advantages of the new tool to your benefit. Anyway, we spent the first day gathering the requirements, in short. Then the second and third day, this is a training day, right? So we spent time with a selected group of people from the partner side who will be heavy users of BigPicture later on. And we want them to be trained in how BigPicture works, how it can be used, what functionality it has. Now, why? Because you might be thinking, well, okay, we need the training, but we actually thought about doing the training at the end where everybody feels comfortable with how the tool is going to be used because it has already been set up for them, pre-configured, right? That's true. But what we found out is that if we do the implementation process ourselves and we deliver the solution to you and deliver the training to you at the end, you are left with a piece of software that is quite complicated. It brings lots of functionalities. We are shoving all those functionalities into the group of people that are going to be using the software in the end, and they are left with 30-40% of the knowledge from the training, because let's face the facts. This is how much people will remember from the training. So most of our work will actually go to waste because people will not remember why it's done like this and how to change it. And also it kind of worked as a discouraging thing because people felt overwhelmed by the tool, and even though it was already pre-configured for them, they thought that it is still too complicated, and either they stayed with the tool and used just the basics of it, or they abandoned it, went back to their own previous solution, or searched for something else in the market, which really broke my heart because BigPicture can do the job pretty well. And so far we met some clients where BigPicture wasn't really for them, but these are the clients that we didn't implement the tool for. We just told them beforehand, look guys, we can see your requirements, it's not going to work. And everybody was just grateful for the honesty and saving them the time that they would otherwise have to spend implementing the tool that wouldn't really work for them. And then we got the rain. Beautiful. Anyway, so that's why we do the training early on, because during the training phase, everybody who is a heavy user of BigPicture or will be the heavy user of BigPicture later on kind of sees the functionality before it's being adjusted to their own environment, and the planning process starts already over there, right? In the heads of the employees of our partner. Not in our head, because in our head, the process has already started on Monday when we were gathering requirements. We already have an idea how the tool is going to be configured. It's not the final idea, it's an idea, right? But we don't want to be the external consultant that just brings the solution and says, look guys, this is how you're going to work, and just trust me, work like that. And that's it, right? We want the partner to be the part of the solution. We want the partner to own the solution with us. We want them to figure out how the system should be configured together with us. So that when we leave, it's not our thing that is left behind, it's customers, partners thing as well. And they care about it, they've put some effort into it, they know how it works because they took part in the solution process and the configuration process, right? So that also means that in that group of heavy users, we always opt to have at least one person who is going to be a BigPicture heavy user. This means that this is going to be the guy who, when we leave, is going to be the master of the thing, right? Whenever someone will have questions, primarily they will go to that person and ask that person. If that person cannot answer the question, sure, we are available. You can all then reach out to us and we will help you to our best knowledge. But it's so important to have someone inside that can help you right away, so that you're not stuck with some basic questions that can be answered so quickly, right? That's why, again, second and third day training, ideas start popping into their heads. And people are already thinking about, okay, this is how we can use this functionality. This is how we can use that functionality to deliver this or that, right? They already start building the solution in their heads. And this is a great prelude to day number 4, which is the day where we actually sit down and figure out the configuration. So we usually do it first on paper and just wreck our brain around it, do some mind mapping, and just use squares and lines to connect things together to figure out whether we get where we want to get. If it seems fine on paper, then we implement it. If the first iteration is okay, awesome, we did a great job. Usually it's not, so usually it needs some rework. So we get the first iteration, a simple proof of concept, we crash it with the requirements, we see if it matches the requirements perfectly or not. If it doesn't, then we iterate and do some tweaks, do some changes to get the result that we are looking for. And then the 5th day is the practice day. So then again with the same group, so maybe I should have added that the 4th day is not done with the whole group. The 4th day is usually done with the people that got hooked up during the training, and of course the one or two people that are supposed to be the BigPicture heavy users. Now the 5th day again is for everyone. This is the practice day where we actually sit down and first explain how we have pre-configured the environment for the people to use. So not only how, but also why. That's so important, why we've configured it like that. And then we give them a free hand to go ahead and implement first projects into the tool. Do it by yourselves. We are here to help. You're in safe environment. Whatever questions you will have, they will get answered. So everybody is free to sit down and try to use the tool, after learning how the tool is supposed to be used. And this is my favorite part, because this is usually the part where people say, look, Tom, up until now I wasn't really sure if we are going in the right direction, but now I see that the job has been done and it's looking really promising. I really love that part of the implementation process. And that kind of concludes the first question. So how the implementation process looks like, what does it consist of? Let's go to the second question now then. What's the length of the typical BigPicture implementation? So the length of the implementation actually heavily depends on how many things have to be changed in Jira, okay? Not only in BigPicture, but also in Jira. So the implementation process usually involves both of those things to work together. It has to, because BigPicture is an add-on to Jira, right? So configuring BigPicture, that can be done within the 1 day, right? So as I said at the beginning, if it's a simple implementation and we don't really change anything or very little in Jira, then we can do everything within that 1 day. That's pretty easy. But if there are changes in Jira that are required to make the process, smooth, make the tool work as intended, then it can basically take a little bit longer depending on how many changes in Jira are needed. Now, when I'm talking about changes in Jira, here are a couple of things that might be considered here. So first of all, how are Jira projects being used? Sometimes the customer already is using Jira projects in some way. Sometimes it's okay, sometimes we have to rework it. Sometimes we are implementing new issue types. When we are implementing new issue types, we have to, design screens, edit screen, create screen, view screen. We have to usually also design a workflow for the new issue type. Sometimes we do some automation around the issue types that we create. What else can we do? Sometimes we work on permissions that are necessary to take place over there, right? So depending on how many things are being changed also on the Jira side, then the implementation process might take longer than 1 week. Our average is probably between 1 and 2 weeks. We have some partners that end up somewhere closer to 3 weeks. Very rare cases where we actually go beyond beyond 3 weeks. These are usually the cases where I would say it's not really an implementation of BigPicture anymore. It's really the implementation of Jira plus BigPicture together, right? Because then where you usually have several processes in Jira that have to be implemented, and it takes time to implement it, test it, sometimes move it from test system to the production system or the environment. So this is the most time-consuming part. So again, depending on the Jira changes, the implementation process might take from 1 to 3 weeks. Usually it's closer to 1.5 to 2 weeks. In very simple cases, it can be 1 week, but in more complicated cases, it might lean towards 3 weeks. Should you or should you not implement BigPicture by yourself? My personal opinion is that the tool is pretty complicated. Imagine that when we are doing the admin training for Jira, admin training for the whole Jira system, this takes 2 days. We spend 2 days with people training them to be Jira admins. When I'm doing BigPicture training for users and admins together, right? So kind of the same thing, this also takes 2 days. So BigPicture app, BigPicture add-on to Jira is more or less in terms of functionality and administration of it, the same size as Jira itself. It's a huge application, right? It has to be huge because it brings lots of functionalities, and now to learn those functionalities takes time. And again, I feel that the training that we do, even though we do our best to be expressive, to show the functionalities with some real life examples, to share our experience and explain how the things can be used for different purposes, it still leaves some gap because you cannot just remember everything from the training that you attend. This is just how our brains work. Usually you only focus on the things that are the most important to you, and then maybe you remember also some things that caught your attention. But I very often face my customers or talk to my customers after the training, and I can see that sometimes they just don't remember things that I know that we have explained during the training, sometimes even more than once, right? So it's a complicated tool, and to use it well, you really need to know how the tool works. Now, it's hard to know how the tool works well after that 1-day training. If somebody is very committed, and we have some partners that do it like that. If somebody is very committed to, learning all the pieces of the software, then it is possible to do the implementation by yourself. We've seen it work, and we've seen it work successfully. We've also seen it failing unsuccessfully, and unfortunately, the second case happens more often. So very, very often people are just, and by failing, I don't mean that they abandon the tool. I also mean that the tool is being used, but it's not being used to its full potential. And this is something that we come up very often. Customers who have been using BigPicture for a while, like 3, 6, 12 months, they just come and say, look guys, we are using the tool, but we're not sure if you're using it in the best way. Could you at least have a look at our implementation and tell us whether we are doing it in a smart way or not, right? And every time I look into an installation like that, I can see that people are using basic functionalities on the Gantt only. People are usually not using boards at all, or are just using them without any synchronization with Jira. People are not using roadmaps. People are using resources, but again, using them in a clumsy way. So there is a big difference between using 20-30% of the tool's functionalities or using it to the full extent. And I think that if you don't have someone who is really committed and has time to sit down and bite into all those details, I think it pays off to hire an external consultant that will help you during the implementation process. So this is of course where we might come in handy. If you would consider hiring us to help you in your implementation process, feel free to reach out to us. I'm sure that there is a link down below, and you can also go to just www.markmywords.pl, use the contact button over there and reach out to us as well. And we will schedule a free session where we might talk about how what is your idea for the implementation of the tool, what kind of help you would seek, and how we might help you on your journey. If you prefer to do it on your own, that's absolutely fine. We don't have a problem with that, absolutely. But remember that you have to put a lot of time and effort into learning the tool and figuring out how it works, so that you can design the final solution in a way that is going to be used by your company to most of that is going to bring the biggest value to your company. That's not an easy task, but again, we've seen customers and partners doing it by themselves, so it is absolutely possible. Feel free to do it by yourself too. I think that's quite enough. That's all we wanted to share in terms of the implementation process of BigPicture. So if you will have any questions, you can leave them in the comments under the videos and we will try to answer them as well. And apart from that, that's it. So thank you for listening and watching. Enjoy the rest of your day. Be extraordinary and see you in more videos.